Nobody's on yet. I'll wait for a couple of people. Could be a long time. Everybody's probably asleep. I genuinely wish I was. Nobody. Sleepy. Yep, okay. Couple of people. That was, I believe, the longest State of the Union in the history of State of the Unions. And the reckoner just said what a waste of time that was. I honestly couldn't agree more. The last run where it was just, he's just reading the speech, nobody's paying attention. Everybody is just wondering, who is this for? The applause at the end, I am willing to wager that just as that was the longest State of the Union address in the history of State of the Union addresses, I don't know, well, I imagine someone could go back. I'm willing to wager that the applause at the end of that speech was the shortest amount of ending applause that any president has ever received in the modern era for a State of the Union address. It was so boring, even for, I mean, I'm never going to like a Donald Trump speech, let's be honest. But there was no entertainment factor. Ostensibly, there was an intent to show some form of unity and grace by acknowledging the various people in the audience, which happened throughout the entire speech. But it was almost immediately preceded or proceeded by him acting like an ass to the Democrats, so it all got unwound. Going through it at the beginning of the speech, Congressman Al Green, who first introduced impeachment, articles of impeachment, I think in Trump's first term, had a sign that he smuggled in saying that black people aren't apes, as a reference to what Donald Trump did in posting that racist meme of the Obamas. And he was kicked out. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar responded, particularly when Trump started talking about singling out Somalis in Minnesota. They, I believe, left shortly after that. There was a couple of moments where Trump was upset that the Democrats weren't standing up. Summer Lee is about to go live with the Working Families Party. I also want to see the Democratic response. We have the largest buildup of military in the Middle East since the Iraq invasion, and I think he spent about 90 seconds on Iran. I'll have plenty to say tomorrow about Chuck Schumer's response to this buildup, but needless to say, they are not engaged in any real effort to sell the war or a potential war to the American public, which, of course, there's no basis for it. So I think they realize, why bother? If we're going to do this, we're going to do it. It's not a function of having the people behind us. My guess, if I had to guess at this point, Trump is going to drop a couple of bombs and then just sort of walk away. Spanberger is happening soon. I'm interested in what we'll probably talk on the show about Summer Lee's. Oh, thank you, Chad. Summer Lee's speech, which is going to be the progressive response. I am curious as to the Democratic one. We promote it. In some ways, you know, I just take it for granted that Trump's speech is not for us. It's for an increasingly narrow group of people. I honestly don't know who he was attempting to appeal to. The real question is like, what are the Democrats signaling by their response? I think just based upon what I'm anticipating from Spanberger, it's going to be essentially more of the same. As we said on the show today, she's doing this from, here she is.
Governing themselves. Before there was a declaration,
she's in Colonial Williamsburg.
A Constitution or a Bill of Rights, there were people in this room. The people who served here ultimately dreamed of what a new nation, unlike anything the world had ever seen, could be. The United States was founded on the idea that ordinary people could reject the unacceptable
they didn't do
excesses
this in
of
Colonial
leadership,
Williamsburg.
band together to demand better of their government, and create a nation that would be an example for the world. And this year, as we celebrate 250 years since America declared our independence from tyranny, I can think of no better place to speak to you as we reflect on the current state of our union. Tonight, as we watched our nation's lawmakers gather for a joint session of Congress, we did not hear the truth from our president. So let's speak plainly and honestly. And let me ask you, the American people watching at home, 3 questions. Is the president working to make life more affordable for you and your family? Is the president working to keep Americans safe both at home and abroad? Is the president working for you? As I campaigned for governor last year,
so those are the
I
3
traveled
questions.
every corner of Virginia, and I heard the same pressing concern everywhere. Costs are too high in housing, health,
affordability,
and childcare. And I know these same conversations are being had all across this country. Because since this president took office last year, his reckless trade policies have forced American families to pay more than $1,700 each.
Hitting the tariffs.
Costs. Small businesses have suffered, farmers have suffered, some losing entire markets. Everyday Americans are paying the price. And even though the Supreme Court struck these tariffs down 4 days ago, the damage to us, the American people, has already been done. Meanwhile, the president is planning for new tariffs, another massive tax hike on you and your family. And Republicans in Congress, they remain unwilling to assert their constitutional authority to stop him. They're making your life harder. They're making
Let's see if
your
she
life more
also
expensive. They're even making it
puts
more
that tax
difficult
hike
to see a
on
doctor.
average Americans.
Rural health clinics in Virginia and across the country are already closing their doors
in opposition to the big tax giveaways in the big beautiful bill to Donald Trump. I mean, to billionaires.
The president celebrated this law, the one threatening rural hospitals, stripping healthcare from millions of Americans and driving up costs in energy and housing, all while cutting food programs for hungry kids. But here in Virginia, I am working with our state legislature to lower costs and make the Commonwealth more affordable. And it's not just me. Democrats across the country are laser focused on affordability in our nation's capital and in state capitals and communities across America. In the most innovative and exceptional nation in the history of the world, Americans deserve to know that their leaders are focused on addressing the problems that keep them up at night. Problems that dictate where you live, whether you can afford to start a business or whether you have to skip a prescription in order to buy groceries. So I'll ask again, is the president working to make life more affordable for you and your family? We all know the answer is no. I grew up in a house of service. My mother was a nurse and my father was a career law enforcement officer. I began my career by following in my father's footsteps as a federal agent.
I think she's doing
money laundering and narcotics cases. I work side by side with local and state police to keep our communities safe and to uphold and enforce
perfectly
the law.
competent job, but
Law enforcement officers
not
across
clear
the
who this
country
is for.
know that it is a unique responsibility to do the serious work of investigating crimes, comforting victims, and making arrests. It's about building trust, and that requires an abiding sense of duty and commitment to community. And yet, our president has sent poorly trained federal agents into our cities, where they have arrested and detained American citizens and people who aspire to be Americans. And they have done it without a warrant. They have ripped nursing mothers away from their babies. They have sent children, a little boy in a blue bunny hat, children to far off detention centers. And they have killed American citizens in our streets. And they have done it all with their faces masked from accountability. Every minute spent sowing fear is a minute not spent investigating murders, crimes against children, or the criminals defrauding seniors of their life savings. Our president told us tonight that we are safer because these agents arrest mothers and detain children.
Got close to the problem with ICE. Got close. But it was really just ultimately a resource management argument.
To terrorize our communities.
And yes, they did have a former CIA agent do this same speech last year. It's like a tradition now for the Democrats.
Working undercover to
ex-CIA
protect the United
agents.
States and our allies from global threats, terrorism, nuclear weapons, and the aggression of adversarial nations around the globe. But as the president spoke of his perceived successes tonight, he continues to cede economic power and technological strength to Russia, bow down to China, bow down to a Russian dictator, and make plans for war with Iran. Here's the truth. Over the last year, through DOGE, mass firings, and the appointment of deeply unserious people to our nation's most serious positions, our president has endangered the long and storied history of the United States of America being a force for good. So I'll ask again, is the president working to keep Americans safe, both at home and abroad? We all know the answer is no. In his speech tonight, the president did what he always does. He lied, he scapegoated, and he distracted. And he offered no real solutions to our nation's pressing challenges.
I can't find the Summer Lee one.
He is actively making worse. He tries to divide us. He tries to enrage us, to pit us against one another, neighbor against neighbor. And sometimes he succeeds. And so you have to ask, who benefits from his rhetoric, his policies, his actions, the short list of laws he's pushed through this Republican Congress? Somebody must be benefiting. He's enriching himself, his family, his friends. The scale of the corruption is unprecedented. There's the cover-up of the Epstein files, the crypto scams, cozying up to foreign princes for airplanes and billionaires for ballrooms, putting his name and face on buildings all over our nation's capital. This is not what our founders envisioned,
Nothing about billionaires or millionaires.
So I'll ask again, is the president working for you? We all know the answer is no. But here's the special thing about America. On our 250th anniversary, we know better than any nation what is possible when ordinary citizens, like those who once dreamed right here in this room, reject the unacceptable and demand more.
I'm unclear what
of their
room she's in.
government. We see it in the determination of students organizing school walkouts all across the country, whose voices are becoming so powerful that the governor of Texas seeks to silence them. We see it in the bravery of Americans in Minnesota standing up for their communities, from peacefully protesting in sub-zero temperatures to carpooling children to school so that their immigrant parents are not ripped away from them in the parking lot. As a mother of 3 school-aged daughters, I am inspired by their bravery, but I am sickened that it is necessary. And Americans across the country are taking action. They are going to the ballot box to reject this chaos. With their votes, they are writing a new story, a
Not
more
just chaos,
hopeful story. In November, I won my election by 15 points. And we won 13 new seats in our state legislature. Because voters decided they wanted something different. Our campaign earned votes from Democrats, Republicans, independents, and everyone in between. Because they knew as citizens they could demand more, that they could vote for what they believe matters, and that they didn't need to be constrained by a party or political affiliation. This is happening across the country. New Jersey elected Mikey Sherrill as governor in a double-digit victory.
We're going to talk about Mondani.
Democrats flipped state legislative seats in places like Georgia, Iowa, Mississippi, and Texas. The list goes on and on. Ordinary Americans are stepping up to run in the spirit of our forefathers. They are running to demand more and to do more for their neighbors and communities. I know the story well. I first ran for office in 2018 alongside dozens of other Democrats who did the seemingly impossible.
Not as horrible as I anticipated, I gotta be honest.
First Democrat elected in 50 years, swinging our district 17 points. Those who are stepping up now to run will win in November because Americans, you at home, know you can demand more, and that we are working to lower costs. We are working to keep our communities and our country safe, and we are working for you. In his farewell address, George Washington warned us about the possibility of, quote, cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men rising to power. But he also encouraged us, all Americans, to unite in a common cause, to move this nation forward. That is our charge once more, and that is what we are seeing across the country. It is deeply American and patriotic to do so, and it is how we ensure that the state of our union remains strong, not just this year, but for the next 250 years as well, because we, the people, have the power to make change, the power to stand up for what is right, the power to demand more of our nation. May God bless the Commonwealth of Virginia, and may God bless the United States of America.
Oh, okay. I think we're going to have the working families speech. Oh, she's doing it right now. Okay.
And they shouldn't be able to escape accountability. That's also why I moved to subpoena the DOJ to release the full unredacted Epstein files back in July. I know what it feels like to be targeted by billionaires, to face attack ads and smear campaigns meant to silence you. It was demoralizing and exhausting. It was also a waste of their money because our movement won, and we have to keep winning. Because when we have progressives in Congress, we get legislation that meets the moment. We get people who fight for accountability and justice. We get opportunities to do the right thing. So if you're sick of the corruption and the cruelty in this administration, if you're frustrated by Democrats who speak boldly but deliver cautiously, or sometimes even vote with MAGA, then believe that change can and will happen if we build political power together. That's what we're doing at the Working Families Party. Join us. Let me end with this. Trump is trying to steal everything that isn't nailed down for himself and his obscenely wealthy friends. But this level of thievery requires consent. It requires silence, exhaustion, resignation, but we do not have to consent. Our organized labor and our organized money are far more powerful than they want us to believe. So join us. We can reject authoritarianism. We can reject corporate power. We can get money out of politics. We can choose a different path, one where we have each other's backs, because working people are the majority. And when we come together and fight, we win. Thank you and good night.
It's interesting, obviously, I just caught the last seconds of Summer Lee's speech, and someone made the point on the chat that it sounded like a campaign commercial. And if you just compare, I watched most of the Spanberger speech with you, and just the end of the Summer Lee one. The Summer Lee one is much more encouraging for people to get involved. The Spanberger one is much more about, when time comes, make a good choice. Which is, this, I don't think it's a terribly profound insight, but the progressives, the Democratic Socialists, Working Family Party, there are politicians who are more focused and keyed in towards organizing and building movements because they know they're going to have to go up against corporate power and moneyed power in trying to govern or legislate. And then there are others that don't, who would rather that people just sort of make their decision every couple of years, and that's it. And so that, without having seen anything else that Summer Lee said in her speech, that was, the first and really the only sort of like contrast I can find between those two speeches. But I do think that Spanberger's speech was perfectly competent. And frankly, just watching anybody with some measure of energy, Trump didn't seem to have much energy in his speech. He got really loud at times and blew out his microphone many, many times. But he didn't seem to have much energy. But maybe tomorrow we will talk more about this. And that's about it. I don't have much more to say about it. I mean, I started to take notes with Donald Trump, but then I realized, like, what am I doing? Who could possibly be following this speech? I have to imagine. I mean, he didn't get through the hockey team until like 9:45. But tomorrow we're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about. We've got organizers from a tenant union, and we've got Mike Consul from the Roosevelt Institute. I believe he's still from there, talking about the economy. One thing that struck me during Trump's address was his complete refusal to acknowledge that there is anything wrong with the economy. And that didn't work out so well for Joe Biden, So we'll see. I mean, I just can't imagine. And look, State of the Union addresses are largely irrelevant. I mean, I have to say there were two State of the Union addresses that that Biden gave. I can't remember which year it was, but one where he had the Republicans yelling that they are committed to not cutting Social Security, which I thought was, putting aside any type of political differences I would have with Joe Biden, strictly analyzing a speech that's for normies, was a good speech. And his last one, where he could, and maybe it was the same one, where he functioned, he seemed like it was, whatever it is that they shot him up with, worked for that time. But I don't think these speeches really have much import other than it gives the media an excuse to push a narrative. And in the past, every time Donald Trump has given a State of the Union address, even like the CNNs would go on to say, like, maybe this was the day he became president. And I just think that is over. I think Donald Trump is now in is polling so poorly that it's locked in. And it's really just a question of whether the Democrats can run good campaigns in the specific congressional districts and senatorial districts. And really, for progressives, the question is, can we win in these primaries? And over the next couple of weeks, we're going to feature some Democratic primary, in some instances, challengers. In some instances, they're running for open seats, because I think the Democrats are going to take the House. And I think if they do take the Senate, it's going to be with more incoming progressives. Just for instance, Plattner's polling numbers against Mills and Collins, if those numbers bear out, if Plattner beats Mills by the numbers that it appears that he's in the lead, and it wasn't a huge sample size in that poll, but it's by a reputable outfit, I think it's going to be a very, very difficult message for the Democratic Party to pretend not to hear. They can ignore Mamdani's win by saying that's New York City. But Maine is a lot more Alabama than it is New York City. So we'll see. That's it for me. I'm going to go to bed. I got to go work in the morning. And I will open the phones tomorrow. And, the problem is I was going to use my computer for OBS, and I was supposed to have Emma on, and we were going to do this live during the speech. And I just don't use the technology often enough to remember how to do it. And that is my way of saying that it is unclear to me where the button is to stop this broadcast. No, that's a filter. Yes, I do. Bye.